Greetings, YouTube. Long time. No see. I've been, just being me. Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm here. I'm neither here nor there. But I was actually very. I've been really wanting to get back into creating videos for YouTube, but I feel like I've been crippled because I don't have a camera and my money spending habits lean more towards buying role playing games or sating my desire for fine wines. Actually, I can't lie. This was free. My stepdad makes wine, so here's to my stepdad. But basically, I feel crippled because I don't have that camera that I need to do what it is that I want to do. I really want to start exploring real video editing. This is inspired by Robert J. Fremantle and several other users in the YouTube community to make not necessarily a slicker video, but I want to understand that aspect of media a little bit better. And I'd like to be able to work on a little bit of Foley art and learn how to create videos better. But I was really, really inspired recently, in fact, about 5 minutes ago, by a video that Tetsubo made and put up. It couldn't have been more than a few days ago, but he put one up about. It's one of his RPG pondering series, and it's about getting new players started in the role playing hobby. Apparently, this was sparked by somebody who sent him a message requesting that he make a video concerning this or that covers this topic. And points he made really, really inspired me to want to put in my 2 cents worth. Now, this is not going to be necessarily directed at the person who wrote the original inquiry to Tetsubo. This is going to be more on a generalized sense, for my opinion, and for the community out there at large. And I really, really think that this is a great topic that the rest of us, RPGers on YouTube, should really be interested in. We should be ambassadors for our hobby. I mean, the only way it can remain healthy and growing is if we are encouraging and consistently trying to get new people interested in the hobby. Now, not like Mormon missionaries, we don't want to force anything down anybody's throats, but anybody who seems interested or comes curiously asking about the hobby, we should be prepared to relay information that paints it in a positive light, that makes people interested and makes them want to actually step across that boundary and try to play a role-playing game, a tabletop role-playing game. Now, Tetsubo touched on some points, and this person who sent him the message had said that the people he wants to get involved in playing his games are well-versed in computer role-playing games, but for some reason there's a disconnect. And now, I think Tetsubo touched on some good points, and he did state that computer role-playing games, despite what one would think, are actually they're actually definitely in the same vein as a role-playing game, a tabletop traditional role-playing game, in that, especially modern games, the inventory and character development as far as statistics are concerned, and the not monetary but the numbers aspect of the game, it's all there in computer role-playing games. And anybody who is used to that kind of stuff should not be discouraged by having to write some things down on a piece of paper with a pencil. However, I think role-playing has become easier since the advent of computer games, and I think people don't really understand tabletop role-playing games quite as well because of the picture that they perceive, or the picture or what they saw that gave them the ideas of what a role-playing game is. Their experiences with role-playing are computer-oriented, and everything's done for you there. It's very easy to immerse yourself in an environment when the environment is rendered in 3D in front of you. It takes a skilled game master to create a 3D imaginative 3D environment for the players. And it takes all sorts of things, a la props or maps. And I know a lot of people are opposed to using miniatures, but I think that is something that, apart from their sheer cost of miniatures, if you were to pursue that as a viable option for your gaming experience,
apart from the cost, and maybe the time spent manipulating these things, I think they're very, very helpful for new role players. I don't think every role player needs miniatures in order to derive excitement and enjoyment out of a role playing game. In fact, I think the opposite is true. I think the more versed you become in role playing, the easier it is to create these scenes in your mind. Once again, it does take a very skilled GM to do this, to invoke that kind of involvement or immersion in players. But I think miniatures are a good way for a starting GM to really bring people, especially from the computer generation, into role-playing games, to give them that tangible element, to paint that three-dimensional picture for them. And I believe that some players need this, but as you grow as a role player, you will eventually, most will be able to grow out of that. I've played a few games where there was no combat at all, and in fact the entire game was played without the roll of a dice. And that's happened on several occasions in role-playing games that I've played. However, the game masters of those games are incredible. I've never been able to achieve that as a game master. It inevitably comes down to dice rolls. For some reason, one way or another, I'm trying to involve that element of the game into the role-playing aspect of the whole event that I'm throwing. And I'd love to increase my skills to a point where I could completely immerse players to a degree to a point where they didn't have to roll dice in order to reap enjoyment out of the experience. But I guess I'm getting a little off topic. It's my nature. This is the way I am. You probably haven't missed that. But I'll continue to ramble on about this subject. Now, personally, I feel that the best option for entry-level role-playing at this point in time is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition. Now, I'm going to get a lot of groans for that, but I disagree highly with all slights that have been aimed at that game. Now, granted, if you think about it, it is definitely a newfangled approach to role-playing, in the sense that when you purchase the product, as originally put forward by the publishers of said product, it was a hefty box. I mean, it's a massive box. If I had, once again, here's where the lack of camera is definitely paralyzing to me, because I could go and show you the amount of stuff that I have put together for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition. But a lot of people are put off by the cards and all the little bits and, the weird dice. And all these different little aspects of this game. However, if you think about it, games like Pathfinder and games like 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons are doing this. They're just not offering it as one package. You buy the books, and then you go off and buy the little packages. You've got all sorts of things with the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. You've got map tiles, you've got miniatures, you have condition markers, you have everything you can imagine as separate purchasable items. Now, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition, just includes these in the entire purchase of the box. A lot of people say it is an expensive initial investment, but I digress and I disagree highly with that argument. You're not paying any more. You're paying very, very little more for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition, the core set, than you are when you buy Pathfinder, or especially Dungeons & Dragons, the 4th edition. You see, when you buy Pathfinder, which is an excellent game, and I'm not downplaying it at all, very easy to understand, not overly complex with dice rolls, but there is a depth there that veteran role players find appealing as well, which is a definite strength of that game. But if you buy the book, and then if you buy the Pathfinder campaign setting and the Pathfinder player's guide, or the rule book, the main rule book, you've already spent more money than you would buying the core set for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition. And it comes with Game Master book, a good detailed Game Master book, but not overly convoluted or complex. A player's book, and it's generally a guide to play. And then you have a book that touches on kind of flavor aspects, but also new rules options for priests and for wizards, who are a little more esoteric and out there in the setting and in the system. Now, These all come in the core product. Also come all the tracking tokens you could need. So, I mean, a lot of people are going to go out and buy tracking tokens anyway, little glass beads or whatever. Things to track progress, things to track different elements to the role-playing games. It also comes with cardboard stand-ups, which have beautifully and lavishly illustrated pictures on them that represent your characters, your NPCs, your monsters, everything. So you don't need to go out and buy miniatures because all of it is provided in one box. Now, people think $100. That's expensive, but when you buy into Warhammer, or when you buy into Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition or Pathfinder, there are other things that will be inevitably added to the experience. You will want to add to the experience. And those cost money. That is going to put you above and beyond what it costs to introduce yourself into Warhammer. Granted, overall, it may be a little bit more expensive because of its nature, the sense that every time they release an expansion, it comes with more bits to play with, more cardboard stand-ups, more cards. The game is card-oriented, but you don't need to use the cards. I mean, there has been a chitless and cardless version that has been developed for the game. Cards represent actions, and you could play an entire game with 7 of the cards, but that's besides the point. For new role players, these cards are an excellent tool because they give them an idea of what a character is capable of. Not every role player, off the seat of their pants, can come up with something to do in a certain situation, but these are great plot hooks, or not necessarily plot hooks, but great seeds for actions that can be taken throughout the course of an adventure. And there are hundreds of them. You've also got talents and all sorts of different aspects. You've got wound cards and a very intricate and amazing system for tracking fatigue and stress, and your character can go insane. And there's all sorts of complexities to this game. But the best thing about it is it's modular, and you're encouraged to use as many or as little of these elements as suits the needs of your group. So I would say personally that the best introduction role-playing game out there on the market is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 3rd edition, followed very closely by Pathfinder, if only because so many other products that one can go and explore are based on that D20 system. And Pathfinder is amazingly written. It has wonderful authors. It has a great history as far as the game system is concerned. So either of those are great options. I'm vying for Warhammer. Now, apart from system, things that can be done to encourage players to play is to, as a game master, be very open with your players. You want to find out from them what it is that they want to get out of the experience of role-playing. You need to also explain to them that the sky is the limit. The imagination is their utmost limit for the game. In a computer game, you can't go climb every tree. Very few computer games allow you that freedom of movement. Even in a game like Assassin's Creed, which has slight role-playing elements to it, and the world is open, you can climb around and all that. You can't climb everything. You can't go up to a tree and scale the tree. In a role-playing game, in a tabletop role-playing game, you are literally only limited by your imagination. So I think if you stress that point to new players especially, it's easier to reel them in. However, you want to make sure you draw a boundary. You don't want to encourage bad play, and that's another topic for a whole other time. But I think that certain players out there like to find ways of just breaking the system or causing havoc or creating tension and trying to ruin everybody's experience. That is beyond me, that mentality, but this is besides the point. So communication is key when trying to introduce people to role-playing games. System is important, but communication is key. That's the main thing. Find out what they want, choose a system, or write an adventure or campaign or whatever that is tailored to what these new players expect or desire to get out of the game. Another thing to stress, in my opinion, to new players especially, is player involvement. There's a guy who goes by Emrakul on the Fantasy Flight Games forums, and he's highly involved in the fan portion of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. His name is Jay Hafner, and he put it really, really, really well, in my opinion, when he discussed the need of certain players to just ruin games. He said that certain players, how did he put it? Strike that. I can't remember what he said. I'll get back to you guys on that one in the comments probably, but he had a really valid point when it came to new players in the game, and respond. Oh yeah, he said that it's unfair that a game master, and I agree fully with this, but it's unfair that a narrator or game master puts in all this effort, and then players don't in any way put effort into their character, into developing even just their character's story in their mind, let alone all sorts of other creative things that they can do, like drawing their character's portrait or really being involved in the artistic aspects of this game. I think that new players should always be encouraged to explore that facet of tabletop games, tabletop role-playing games, in the sense that it is a creative outlet. That's what it is. Essentially, it is storytelling as a community, and it is an opportunity for everybody around the table to mutually gather some sort of creative spark or creative force together. And the game can only be dragged down by people who are leeching off of the experience. So I think that new players should be groomed to a degree. They should be taught from a very early age pros and cons. I think that that's a little off topic, but I think that that's very important when talking about new players and role-playing games. So in closing, and to break down this randomly decided new video, I think the system that you need to go with for new role players would be Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay the 3rd edition, or Pathfinder. I think Tetsubo hits it on the head when he suggests Pathfinder. I mean, it's well known, lots of people know it, and it's very easy to teach. And that big, thick tome may intimidate people, but there's only so much that a new player will really need to know. I mean, a good game master can coach or teach all the intricacies of combat and magic to the player, and then they only need to really delve into what is applicable to their character, and then worry about the actual story elements of their character. So those are the two systems that I would suggest. I would also suggest that you groom new players. You make sure they understand the weight of the task that the GM is involved with, or narrator, and how much he has to put into the game, and therefore they should be encouraged to help out in whatever way they can by predetermining what they want their character to be and what they want them to do. And then I would also say that you shouldn't pigeonhole a computer gamer and say that, well, because you play computer games, you don't understand the breadth of a role-playing game in the tabletop sense. I think what you should do is encourage their strengths, but try to weed out anybody who wants to power game. This is just from my personal experience and my personal taste. I do not like people who play the numbers. A role-playing game is a game, and it's been said many times. That's Penguins. That's 32, 23 Penguins 32. It's been a very long time. I apologize, community. It's not Brady. It's Bolt Orange, or Bolt Orange, as Brady likes to put it. But he makes some points about how it is a game first, although he does agree that we all pretty much come to the same conclusion that a role-playing game is a storytelling medium, and what we're doing is trying to tell a story, and that is more important than rules. So I think that needs to be conveyed to players, that it's not all about the numbers, because that is something that is greatly lost in a role-playing game, even a role-playing game as deep as Skyrim or Oblivion or whatever, or even Neverwinter Nights or something like that. Something that is really detailed, but at the same time, it does lack heavily in true role-playing elements. So I think they need to understand that imagination is the bar none, imagination is it's the only limitation. So probably a big rambling video. I apologize to all you guys out there who like concise videos. It's been a while. I miss being part of the community. As time rolls on, usually during the winter, I become more active in stuff like this. And it's getting damn cold up here in Canada, so hopefully I'll be a party to you guys' excellent input. I really love this community. I really love being part of it, and I feel like I've dropped the ball a little bit and missed out on a great many good discussions. So hopefully this is the start of something to spur me towards getting a camera. I really want to be involved. Thanks a lot, guys, and keep gaming.